also want to cover the hottest topic possibly today, and these are cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
We were basically involved in both tech startups and crypto startups investing. In the future, will the success rate of ICOs potentially be greater than for tech startups?
So yeah, so the idea is, so last year I started something called the CryptoAssets Institute, which is a think tank around the blockchain economy. So what that means is most of the discussion today is around the technologies of blockchain. That's a developer discussion, which is incredibly important to technology. It's a lot like when the developers were talking about cloud services and how that could potentially change things. Then the entrepreneurs came along and created SaaS, software as a service, which is the same thing, but it's how you sell that to people who don't understand the technology. Right now we're starting to see the shift of becoming customer facing, where people don't need to know that that's a blockchain powered whatever, that the solution exists because of the ledger and because of the way that that technology is able to change how we approach the problem. So what we're seeing now is people, entrepreneurs who understand the technology enough but are starting to see how they could solve problems with it. Then they hire amazing developers to solve the problem. So to bring that back to your question about ICOs, the problem with, there's two big problems with what happened with ICOs last year. The first is fraud. But you know what? The same thing happens in the stock market every day, because people who want to invest don't take the time to figure out if they're investing in something that makes sense. It's not hard to go on LinkedIn and find out whether or not these people exist. It's not hard to pick up the phone and call the company that they have as a reference and say, does that person work for you? Those two things would have solved 100% of the fraudulent things that, well, maybe 99. There were a few people that just ran away with the money, but,
yes, of course.
but most of it was just completely fake. On the fraud side, and there wasn't as much of that as it was made out to be, but there was enough of it that it matters. But there will always be ways and people who want to take advantage of people wanting to make easy money, and the speculative nature of the cryptocurrency community right now is causing that to happen. So that's the first problem we have, but that's going to change because regulation and other things. People will get smarter. The second piece is, and this is coming from the investor side of things, from the VC world. If a startup needs $500,000, if a startup needs $5 million to do what they say they're going to do with that money, so the next 9 to 18 months of their life, they need this amount of money. You don't give them more unless giving them more is there's very clear ways that can help them go faster or do more. If a startup needs $5 million and you give them 40, they will mess that up, especially first-time entrepreneurs. Too much capital doesn't help anything. So I think one of the things that we'll see, or hopefully we'll see this year with ICOs more and more, is less capital being raised, but the right amount of capital being raised for these projects. So I think maybe what we'll see is a rolling kind of a thing, where maybe people will do an ICO every year and a half. So they'll say, maybe we're going to put 50 million tokens up accessible, but every year we're only going to put 10 million of them out there for a coin offering. So that you know how many tokens exist, but it's not on the market at the same time. And that helps the startup not have too much money. It helps I think, give credibility and trust to these companies. If you've never built a company, scaling, from 0 to 5 employees and 5 employees to 1,500 employees because you have a bunch of cash and think you can do that, it's not going to work like you think it does. So I think this year, one of the projects we're working on that will be coming out in the next, at the end of May, is the 2018 landscape report for ICOs. And that'll be covering several areas, but especially Central and Eastern Europe. And what we already are noticing is this is becoming much more professional in terms of trust. I think enough regulation to control the fraud side of it, maybe a little too much regulation, which is going to be dangerous for some of these markets that would like to have ICOs, but that are maybe forcing their entrepreneurs to do something in Switzerland or in Singapore because they're not sure how things are going to be handled. So I think 2018 is still going to be a discovery year where people are kind of figuring this out on their own, but we're seeing the trends start to develop. And then 2019 will really show, I think, how we can leverage ICOs as one of the new fundraising tools next to venture capital, next to crowdfunding. But yeah, I think we're still in the learning stage, but I think this year will be a safer learning environment than last year.
If you're talking about the general public, they basically do not have much knowledge about cryptocurrencies and blockchain. Is that a problem? Because a lot of central banks and few countries are thinking about introducing digital currencies.
Yeah.
This will definitely change our everyday. So, will they actually create digital currencies? What's your opinion on that?
I think what's important, whether you're talking about, so the idea behind crypto assets is to, not everything is actually a currency. So the word crypto assets is being used to talk about three things really: cryptocurrencies, security tokens, which are the tradable, investable type ideas, and utility tokens, which are the ones that exist just to power a blockchain solution. Now, it's rare to have a blockchain-powered solution that is only one of those. It's maybe a mix, but what's important to understand is not everything is a currency. So even ICO is problematic because it's initial coin offering. And in reality, most of these startups are not coins, they're tokens. They're not, it's not a currency. So I think some of that still has to be figured out for people to understand what that is. My point in that is you have to have a why if you're going to create a token for something. So I think it's very interesting that some of these countries could move towards a coin, a cryptocurrency idea that's local to their economy. But why? What is the value that it brings compared to the currency they already have? What's the utility that brings to the population, to the people who will use that? Because there has to be some fundamental significant value there, otherwise people just won't use it. It won't make any sense. So I think what we need to see is why, whether it's a government, whether it's a startup, why do you want to tokenize what you're doing? And so until there's a real answer to that, that doesn't make sense for everyone. Not everything needs a token. So there needs to be a very strong why. And if there is, then I think that can scale if it's approached right. There's always a learning curve to new technologies, but that's why this it shouldn't be about the blockchain. These people shouldn't be hearing that word. That's the technology that will power that idea. All they need to know about is, it's kind of like Coinbase, the wallet that's very popular, kind of the biggest way to buy currency. People can, there are people who criticize different things about Coinbase, but what's very clear that they have done fantastically well is you download an application, you use your credit card or your bank account to buy a certain amount of Ethereum or Litecoin or Bitcoin, and now it's in your wallet on your app, and you don't understand how any of that happened, and that's brilliant. Because that's where the next layer of solutions around the blockchain need to be. They need to be for the people who don't need to understand the technology. So if governments want to roll out coins for some reason, if there's a strong why, that's great, but it needs to be seamless so that people don't need to understand how it works. They have their wallet that's safe and secure, but they don't need to know how any of that, they don't have to download anything special or weird that they have to figure out technologically. Otherwise that will block adoption. It's a very difficult thing. So I think lots of people are talking about it, but is there a unique need to have a specific one for each country, or do we just need to have, if we're talking cross-border payments, is that not something like Ripple that has already got like 150 different agreements with major banks and organizations around the world to do cross-border transactions? Does it need to be public, or can it stay private? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So there are many things to actually cover around this topic.
Yeah. Well, what's important to understand is we had the first wave of the internet with websites that then became kind of everything around e-commerce. Then we had mobile. Then we had cloud. Blockchain is not just a cool thing that people are playing with. It is the next fundamental shift in terms of a technology layer behind everything we're going to be working on. It's going to be in a massive amount of solutions and tools that people use on a daily basis in the next couple of years. So yes, regardless of what's going on in the speculative markets and people buying and selling coins and assets and making money or not in that space, the reality is there is huge value in the blockchain space because of the way that this will solve so many problems moving forward.
There are actually many change makers here at Leap, and some of them may engage in cryptocurrencies, who knows. Can you just tell to our viewers your secret of success in general?
So there's two great questions in there. If we talk just about the blockchain and crypto space, I think what's important to understand is we are still at the beginning of all of this. So there are people who are experts, calling themselves experts, but most people have 2 or 3 years of experience in this. I mean, maybe unless you bought Bitcoin at the very beginning, and so that's still not that long before that. But if you've been doing this a lot, or if you've been advising an ICO, what I would encourage people to be careful of is the amount of people who are positioning themselves as experts, who have maybe done this once or twice, or they read the book, or whatever, and that's okay, because we're all learning this, and we're all at the very beginning of it. What's important is before you trust someone to give you advice around everything in the blockchain technology space, but especially everything around the legal space, around ICOs, around regulation, around the crypto assets, the blockchain, the business of blockchain idea about what we're going to as entrepreneurs. So it's 2 things. First of all, you can be that expert because this is still all being figured out. So dive in and start learning. And the second thing is that if you are going to trust people, make sure that they do have the that experience. And again, we're all learning in this place, so we're all still very early in that experience. But there's a lot of wealth of knowledge to gain from the people who have been doing this for quite a while. But there's also a tremendous amount of people who are trying to sell it as a consulting or advising type thing, who maybe don't know that much and could be dangerous to wanting to if you use them to build your idea around. But I'd say just be careful about who you have. That's actually a larger entrepreneurship thing. You must have advisors and mentors. Just make sure they're good ones. They aren't, just because someone says they are doesn't mean they actually have anything good to say. One of the things I mentioned in the keynote was you have to have advisors. So the first thing is listen to them, and the second thing is don't listen to them. You have to become wise enough to figure out whether or not that advice is truly applicable. So I'd say that would be my first big thing there around the crypto space, is be careful about just where you're learning things from. So many resources, not all of it's good. As an entrepreneur, I don't know. I think, I guess one of if I was to underline one main thing, it is, I talked a lot about networking because I really believe that the major thing that helps you succeed is networking. It's about who knows you, not necessarily about who you know. So get to know as many people who have done amazing things and who know other amazing people as you can, because it's about those people knowing you. It's about whenever they have a problem, whenever they need something, and they go looking for the person who can help them, they think of you because that's what you do. So when people think of you, that creates opportunities for you. Just because you know everybody doesn't actually mean those opportunities will come. There's a big difference. So I would say work on your network. And why is that important and applicable to the maybe 20-something crowd that's here in terms of this younger change maker type conference, is a lot of times you don't have the confidence or believe in yourself to think, gosh, I could go on LinkedIn and track down the CEO of a big company and maybe get a coffee with him. Or I can call up that journalist and maybe talk to them. If you can figure out a way to provide value, then I think people are always willing to have that discussion if you approach them professionally and respectfully. These are people who generally have way too many demands on their time. But the people who ask nicely and who are trying to also give back in some way, you eventually can, there are tons of no's in entrepreneurship. But if you ask 100 highly successful and capable people to have a coffee with you, I guarantee you, if you go online and you look around about how to do that right, I guarantee you half of them will say yes at some point or another. And that will rocket your entrepreneurship into a very different space. So I guess it would be, until you have the confidence to believe that you can become the great entrepreneur, fake it and go meet as many great entrepreneurs and experienced people as you can, and that will pull you up and encourage you to be fantastic. So it's exciting to be around this kind of energy and people with very cool ideas.